Hi there. Tonight's Bible Nugget comes from Galatians Chapter 1 and starting in verse 11. It's talking about Paul and how he received his revelation. And verse 11 it says, "But I make known to you, brethren, that the gospel which was preached by me is not according to man. For I neither received it from men, nor was I taught it, but it came through the revelation of Jesus Christ." And then chopping to verse 15, it says, "But when it pleased God, who separated me from my mother's womb and called me through his grace, to reveal his Son in me, that I might preach him amongst the Gentiles, I did not immediately confer with flesh and blood, nor did I go up to Jerusalem to those who were apostles before me, but I went into Arabia and returned again to Damascus." And then it says, this is really interesting. Then that was just after he was converted. And then in verse 18 it says, "Then after 3 years I went up to Jerusalem to see Peter, and I remained with him 15 days. But I saw none of the other apostles except James, the Lord's brother. Now concerning the things which I write to you, indeed before God, I do not lie." So whenever Paul gets the conversion experience on the way to Damascus, he's preaching for a while, and then he goes away for 3 years into Arabia. And in that time, he sees amazing things, and he has revelation directly from Jesus. So after 3 years, he goes to Jerusalem just to check with Peter and James, and he also hears so he's talking to them about their eyewitness accounts of being around Jesus and what Jesus said, and also their account of the resurrection. And he's telling them things which would only be known by somebody who was actually there at the time. So it's obvious that Jesus has been talking to him. And then if we go to Galatians 2, we've got, "Then after 14 years, I went up again to Jerusalem with Barnabas, and also took Titus with me. And I went up by revelation and communicated to them that gospel which I preach amongst the Gentiles, but privately to those who were of reputation, lest by any means I might run, or have had run, in vain. Yet not even Titus, who was with me, being a Greek, was compelled to be circumcised." And this occurred. And then if we skip down to verse 9, it says, "And when James, Peter, and John," so here's John now, "who seemed to be pillars, perceived the grace that had been given to me, they gave me and Barnabas the right hand of fellowship, that we should go to the Gentiles, and that they to the circumcised. They desired only that we should remember the poor, the very thing which I was also eager to do." So in other words, Paul's been out preaching the gospel all over the Asia Minor, and he comes back, and he's already checked with Peter after his 3 years of revelation, and he seems like he's got it down. And then he comes back after 14 years of his different missionary journeys, and he goes up to Jerusalem again, and they say, "Yep, you're right, you're spot on, you're preaching exactly what we are preaching as well." And so I thought that was interesting, that because Paul's background, he knows the Old Testament backwards. He was obviously the head pupil, the star pupil of Gamaliel, I think his name's Gamaliel, and he was the leading rabbi of the time of Christ. And so Paul was his star pupil. And then he's been so zealous for the Old Testament and the law, and now he's turned around and completely changed. And now he's proving through the Old Testament and through the scriptures that Jesus is the Christ. So that's great. I thought that gave us a little insight into how it must have been for Paul.